eyes seemed to hold a deep understanding what has befallen. This Brahmana, he asked gently, his voice laced with compassion, "Tell me the circumstances of Izdimus." The princes recounted their story, and Aristonamai listened attentively as they finished speaking. He gazed at them with an air of profundity. "I shall reveal to you a truth," he said, his words dripping with wisdom. "Death holds no power over those who have cultivated spiritual practices. We Brahmanas are not bound by the cycle of life." And death, as if to illustrate his words, Aristonama revealed that the Munai they had killed was actually his own son Tarksha. The princes were stunned, their minds reeling with wonder. How is this possible? They asked, their voices barely above a whisper. Tarksha himself stepped forward, his eyes shining with a deep understanding. "Death has no hold on us." He explained, his words dripping with wisdom. "We live in accordance with our dharma, performing our sacred duties without fear of consequence. We honor the Brahmanas and treat them with kindness. By living in harmony with nature and cultivating spiritual practices, we transcend the bounds of mortal existence." Tarksha spoke, his words seemed to wave a spell of transformation over the princes. They listened intently, their faces reflecting a newfound understanding. "We have been blind to the truth," they said, their voices filled with remorse. "Please teach us more about this." In a distant land, a revered sage named Markandeya sat amidst a gathering of wise men, recounting tales of ancient times. He began by speaking of Atriya renowned Rishi, who had once been consumed by a desire for wealth and material possessions. Atriya's wife Hanashriya argued that he should seek out the illustrious Prince Vana, who was known for his piety and devotion to truth. She believed that the prince would grant them riches, which they could then distribute among their sons and servants. Atriya, however, refused to go to Prince Vana's sacrifice, citing concerns about the jealous Brahmanas who surrounded him. Undeterred, Atriya hastened to Prince Vana's sacrificial altar, where he was greeted by the wise Rishi Gautama. Atriya praised the prince, saying that he was the greatest of sovereigns and the foremost ruler on earth. But Gautama indignantly replied, "You are mistaken. Atriya Indra, the lord of all creatures, is the one who truly reigns supreme." A dispute between Atriya and Gautama drew the attention of Kasyapa, a learned Brahmana, who approached them to inquire about the cause of their argument. When he discovered that they were debating Prince Vana's role as a ruler, Kasyapa suggested seeking the counsel of Sanakumara, a wise sage well versed in the scripture. Sanakumara listened attentively to the disputants and then offered his wisdom. He explained that a Brahmana's energy combined with a Kshatriya's power could destroy all enemies, just as fire fueled by the wind can burn down forests. The king, he said, was not only a protector of his subjects, but also a promoter of laws and morals, much like Indra and other deities. Sanakumara's words carried great weight with the assembly of wise men, who declared that the king's greatness was evident in the sacred texts. They sided with Prince Vana, proclaiming that he was indeed the greatest of men, worthy of comparison to the gods. Prince Vana, overjoyed by this verdict, bestowed a bountiful gift upon Atriya, 100 million gold coins and 10 bars of gold. Atriya accepted the gifts graciously without any breach of propriety and returned home to distribute the wealth among his sons. With his material desires fulfilled, he then set out for the forest, determined to perform penances and cultivate greater spiritual power. Says Markandeya concluded his tale. The gathering of wise men sat in contemplative silence, reflecting on the timeless wisdom of the ancient sages. The story of Atriya's journey served as a reminder that true greatness lies not in material wealth, but in the cultivation of wisdom, virtue, and self-discipline. In a serene and peaceful setting, Markandeya continued to narrate a crucial conversation between Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and creativity, and Tarksha, a wise and learned Brahmana. The scene unfolded as Tarksha, eager to learn from the revered lady, approached her with reverence. Though conqueror of hostile cities, Markandeya said, Saraswati too, when interrogated by that intelligent Munite, Tarksha had said, "This do thou listen to her words." With a gentle smile, Saraswati began to share her wisdom with the inquisitive Tarksha. He asked her, "Excellent lady, what is the best thing for a man to do here below, and how must he act, so that he may not deviate from the path of virtue? Tell me all this, O beautiful lady, so that, instructed by thee, I may not fall away from the path of virtue." Saraswati's eyes sparkled with compassion as she began her response. "He who is engaged in the study of the Vedas," she said, and with sanctity and equanimity, perceives the supreme Godhead in his proper sphere, ascends the celestial regions, and attains supreme beatitude with the immortals. Her words painted a vivid picture of a tranquil realm where sacred lakes shimmered like golden jewels. Their shores adorned by pious men who lived in contentment. As she spoke, Saraswati revealed the secrets of spiritual growth. He who giveth cows to Brahmanas attaineth the highest regions by giving bullocks. He reacheth the solar regions by giving clothes. He getteth to the lunar world, and by giving gold he attaineth to the state of the immortals. Her words emphasized the importance of selfless acts which could elevate one's status in the afterlife. Tarksha listened intently, his eyes wide with wonder. He asked Saraswati to elaborate on the rules for maintaining the sacred fire, as inculcated in the Vedas. With a gentle nod, she began to explain the intricacies of this ancient tradition. O Tarksha, she said, the virtuous man who is constant in presenting oblations to the sacred fire for 7 years sanctifieth by his own action 7 generations up. And Dallas Markandeya finished narrating this conversation. A sense of reverence filled the air. The listeners were left with a deeper understanding of the importance of selfless spiritual growth and the maintenance of sacred traditions. In a distant era, Yudhishthira, the wise son of Pandu, sought the counsel of Markandeya, a revered Brahmana. The king's curiosity was piqued by the legend of Vivaswata, Manu, a powerful and righteous rishi who was said to be equal in glory to Brahma himself. Markandeya began his tale recounting how Manu, the son of Vivaswan, stood on one leg and with uplifted hand practiced severe penance in the Vaisala Juju forest for 10,000 years. His head bowed, eyes fixed steadfastly ahead, he endured unimaginable hardships, yet remained unyielding in his devotion. As man sat in meditation, a small fish swam up to him. Trembling with fear, the fish begged man to save it from the larger predators that roamed the waters. Moved by compassion, Manu gently plucked the fish from its watery home and placed it in an earthen vessel. As time passed, the fish grew at an astonishing rate. Soon outgrowing its container, the fish, now a behemoth, implored Manu to find a new home. Manu, with a gentle hand, transferred the fish to a larger tank. But even that proved insufficient. The fish asked to be taken to the Ganga River and eventually to the vast expanse of the Ocean. With each relocation, the fish continued to grow. Its size and majesty awe-inspiring. As man tended to the fish with love and care, it revealed to him a profound secret. The world was about to face a catastrophic flood, and only those who followed his instructions would be saved. The fish instructed man to build an ark stocked with seeds from all creation and to ascend to the highest peak of the Himavat mountain. Manu, undaunted by the enormity of the task, set out to gather the various seeds as directed by the fish. As he sailed across the turbulent waters in his magnificent vessel, the fish reappeared, its body now adorned with horns. The fish towed the ark through treacherous waves, guiding Manu and the 7 rishis to safety. When the flood waters finally receded, the fish spoke its final words. I am Brahma, the Lord of all creatures. I have assumed this form to save you from destruction. Vivaswata, Manu will create a new world free from illusions. Grasped with those enigmatic words, the fish vanished, leaving Manu to fulfill his destinies. The legend of the fish unfolded. Yudhishthira listened with rapt attention, his heart filled with wonder and awe. Markandeya concluded his tale, emphasizing that the story had the power to purify the listener's soul, granting them happiness, prosperity, and a place in heaven. The sun had set on the kingdom of Hast and Kura, casting a warm orange glow over the assembly gathered in the courtyard. King Yudhishthira, his eyes filled with a deep sense of wonder and curiosity, turned to the venerable sage Markandeya. O great Mani, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, you have lived for countless ages, witnessing the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of stars. You are a treasure trove of knowledge, a living embodiment of the eternal verities. I implore you, share with me your wisdom that I may understand the mysteries of the universe. Markandeya's eyes twinkled like the stars on a clear night as he bowed his head in reverence to the self-existent being, the primordial force that had given birth to all existence. This Janardana, he began, his voice filled with awe and reverence, is the grand mover, the creator of all, the soul and framer of all things. He is beyond time and space, beyond comprehension and description. His knowledge is infinite, greater than that of all the gods combined. As Markandeya spoke, the king's eyes grew wide with wonder, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what he was being told. The sage continued, in the beginning there were 4 ages: Krita, Yuga, Treta, Yuga, Dwapara, Yuga, and Kala Yuga. Each age had its own duration, its own characteristics. In the Krita Yuga men lived for thousands of years, their bodies strong and healthy. They practiced austerities, studied the Vedas, and performed sacrifices with devotion. But as the ages passed, things changed. Men became shorter lived, weaker in strength, energy, and prowess. The king listened intently, his mind racing with questions. Markandeya's words painted a vivid picture of a world in decline, where men had lost their sense of purpose, their connection to the divine in the Kalat. Yuga, the sage continued, men become addicted to falsehood and speech sacrificing, and gifts are performed by representatives rather than principles. Brahmanas perform acts reserved for Siddhas, while Siddhas take up the practice of religious acts. The very course of the world is turned upside down. As Markandeya spoke, a sense of foreboding settled over the assembly. The king's eyes grew heavy with concern, his heart filled with a deep sadness. He knew that the signs Markandeya spoke of were indeed portents of the universal destruction, the end of an age, and the beginning of a new one. The sage's words hung in the air like a challenge, a call to action. The king felt a sense of responsibility wash over him, a sense of duty to preserve the ancient traditions, to uphold the values of his forefathers. He knew that he had much. The sun had barely risen over the tranquil landscape as Markandeya began to speak. In a hushed tone, the deity said to me, "O Brahmana, even the gods do not truly know me. But because you have been gratified with my presence, I shall reveal to you how I created the universes." He spoke. His eyes seemed to gaze into the depths of time itself. In ancient times, I called the waters Nara, and because they have ever been my home, I was named Narayana. The water homed one. His voice grew stronger, and his word became a gentle breeze that rustled the leaves of the nearby trees. "I am the source of all things, the eternal, the unchangeable." He continued, "I created all existence, and it is I who will also destroy it when the time comes." Markandeya's eyes seemed to sparkle as he spoke of his various forms and names: Vishnu, Brahma, Sekar, Vaisravana, Yamashiva, Soma, Kasyapa, each one a facet of his infinite being. As he spoke, the air around them began to shimmer, and the very fabric of reality seemed to unfold before their eyes. "I am the flame that burns within the hearts of all beings," Markandeya said, his voice growing softer. "Now I am the sun, the moon, the stars, all of which are but tiny sparks within my vast expanse." He paused, and for a moment there was silence between them. Then with a gentle smile he continued, "And so, O Brahmana, I have revealed to you the secrets of the universe. Know that whatever is obtained by men through truth, charity, asceticism, and harmlessness towards all creatures, all this is due to my arrangements." As Markandeya finished speaking, the air seemed to settle back into its usual stillness. The trees stood tall once more, their leaves rustling softly in the gentle breeze. But for a moment there was a sense of wonder that lingered, a sense that the very fabric of reality had been revealed to them. Markandeya's eyes sparkled with a hint of mischief as he added, "And so, Brahmana, you must know that I create myself in new forms. When virtue and morality decrease, and sin and immorality increase, and it is then I take my birth in the families of virtuous men to restore tranquility by exterminating all evils." As the sun continued its ascent into the sky, Markandeya's words seemed to fade away like a gentle mist. But one thing was clear: the deity had revealed to them the secrets of his infinite being, and it was a revelation that would stay with them forever. The silence between them grew thicker now, as if the very weight of the universe hung in the balance. And yet,
in the twilight hours, Yudhishthira, the wise son of Kunti, sought the counsel of Markandeya, the venerable sage of Prigu's lineage. The monarch's curiosity was piqued by the tales of the Muni who had shared with him the secrets of creation and destruction in the grand cycle of Ubyssus. They sat together on a serene hillside, surrounded by the gentle rustling of leaves and the sweet songs of birds. Yudhishthira asked Markandeya to unfold the mysteries of the Kala age. The sage's eyes sparkled with a deep understanding as he began his discourse, weaving a tapestry of words that would paint a vivid picture of the world's descent into darkness and the Krita age. Markandeya said all was pure and unblemished, like a bull with 4 sturdy legs. Morality stood tall, its presence felt in every aspect of life. But as we entered the Treta age, sin took hold, and morality lost one leg, leaving it to stumble upon 3 remaining pillars. In the Dwapara age, sin and morality became intertwined, each supporting the other. Yet neither dominant. Markandeya's words hung in the air like a whispered secret as Yudhishthira listened intently. the sage continued, in the Kali age morality will be reduced to a mere shadow of its former self, with only one leg remaining. It will struggle to maintain its presence amidst the overwhelming tide of sin and deceit. As Markandeya spoke, his voice painted vivid images in Yudhishthira's mind. He envisioned a world where Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, and Sudras will all succumb to the darkness, their virtues contracted and divested of asceticism and truth. The once honored practices of ceremonial rites and sacrifices would give way to avarice and ignorance. In this desolate landscape, men would live on fish and milk. Goats and sheep for cows would be extinct. They would till lowlands, employing young cows and drawing the plow and carrying burdens. Sons would slay their fathers, and fathers their sons. Without facing opprobrium, the world would be filled with much behavior, notions, ceremonies, and sacrifices would cease, and joy would vanish. As Markandeya's tale unfolded, Yudhishthira saw a future where kings, blinded by ignorance and arrogance, would challenge one another to take each other's limbs. Kshatriyas would become the thorns of the earth, inflicting punishments without mercy or compassion. Women would choose their own lords, and the right hand would deceive the left. The sage's words painted a picture of a world where men would cease to trust one another, and avarice and folly would reign supreme. Sin would increase while virtue would fade and disappear.
In the distant past, a great sage named Markandeya sat in contemplation, his eyes gazing into the depths of time. He began to speak, his voice weaving a tapestry of tales that would transport all who listened to realms both familiar and unknown. Kaka, he said, the mighty Avatar will bring an end to the darkness that has plagued this world for so long with the power of the divine. He will vanquish the thieves and robbers, restoring order and righteousness to the land. Markandeya's words painted a vivid picture of Kok as triumph, the great horse sacrificed where the earth would be given to the Brahmanas, as a gift, the establishment of a new era, free from corruption and science. Kok ruined the earth. His legion grew. People from all corners of the world came to behold him, to bask in the radiance of his virtue. The Brahmanas, those revered guardians of knowledge, were inspired by his example, and they too began to emulate his conduct. They exterminated the remnants of evil, their cries echoing through the land, as they rooted out the thieves and robbers. With sin vanquished and virtue triumphant, a new era dawned on earth. The Kreta age had begun, an era of unparalleled prosperity, and peace. Gardens bloomed with vibrant colors. Sacrificial compounds were rebuilt, and educational centers flourished. The Brahmanas, now freed from the shackles of ignorance, became pillars of wisdom, guiding humanity along the path of righteousness. Markandeya's narrative continued to unfold, painting a picture of a world where truth and charity reigned supreme. The people of this era lived in harmony with one another, their hearts filled with compassion and kindness. The rulers of the earth governed justly their subjects, prospering under their wise leadership. As Markandeya finished his tale, Yudhishthira, the wise king of the Kuras, turned to him with a question. O great sage, how can I protect my people? What course of conduct should I follow? Markandeya's response was like a gentle breeze on a summer day, soothing and reassuring. Be merciful, devoted to the good of all creatures. He said, love none, scorn none, speak truthfully, be humbled, and always strive for the protection of your people. Yudhishthira listened intently, his heart filled with a sense of wonder and awe. He knew that Markandeya's words were not mere advice, but a call to action, a reminder of the duties that lay before him as a king. And so, with a sense of purpose and determination, he vowed to follow the path laid out by the sages. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the assembly. Markandeya's words continued to resonate within their hearts. The sons of, in a lush forest, King Parikshit, a mighty ruler from the Ikshika dynasty, rode alone on horseback, chasing deer. His exhaustion and hunger led him to a serene tank, where he refreshed himself and his steed. As he sat by the tank's side, he was enchanted by the sweet melodies of a maiden gathering flowers. Nearby the king approached her, and with great charm asked about her identity and origins. The maiden replied that she was simply a maiden, but agreed to become the king's wife on one condition, that he would never show her water. Parikshit accepted this pledge and married her, indulging in joyous moments together. However, as time passed, his troops arrived at the Seine, and the monarch, accompanied by his new bride, returned to his capital. Yet he remained elusive, shutting himself away with her in private quarters. The minister and chief intrigue by their seclusion created an artificial forest nearby, complete with a secluded tank filled with sweet water. The king was invited to enter this forest where he and his beloved wife spent idyllic moments together as they sat beneath a bower of manava creepers. The king suggested that she plunge into the tank's waters, but to his dismay she vanished beneath the surface, leaving him frantic and searching for her in desperation. Parikshit ordered the tank's waters to be drained, only to discover a frog sitting at its mouth. His anger flared, and he decreed that all frogs in his kingdom would be slaughtered as tribute, with anyone seeking an audience with him required to bring dead frogs as offering. The affrighted frogs represented their plight to their king Eu, who took on the guise of an ascetic and approached Parikshit. He pleaded with the monarch to spare the innocent frogs, warning that his wrath would lead to diminished prosperity and spiritual merit for those consumed by ignorance. However, Parikshit's grief over losing his beloved wife clouded his judgment, and he vowed to slay. The Frogsi revealed himself as the king of the frogs, and explained that the maiden Susavana was indeed his daughter, who had a history of deceiving kings with her untruthful nature. The monarch Parikshit demanded that Eu hand over his daughter to him, which the frog king reluctantly did. As the days passed, Parikshit became enamored with Susavana's companionable virtues and felt as though he had conquered the three worlds. He bowed down to Eu in reverence and expressed his gratitude. The frog king, obtaining his daughter's permission, returned to his kingdom, leaving behind a legacy that would shape the future of the royal family. Years later, Parikshit begot three sons with Susavana: Sala, Dala, and Vala. As he grew older and more devoted to asceticism, he installed his eldest in a tranquil setting surrounded by the gentle rustling of leaves and the soothing songs of birds. The rishis Brahmanas and Yudhishthira, the just king, gathered around Markandeya. They inquired about the extraordinary life of Vaka, the royal sage, who had lived for 100 years. Markandeya smiled knowingly, his eyes twinkling with ancient wisdom. Vaka is indeed a great ascetic, he began, but I shall tell you of an encounter between Vaka and Indra, the slayer of Vala, that will reveal the joys and sorrows of immortal life. As Markandeya spoke, the scene shifted to a lush Thasilam by the sea, where Vaka resided in harmony with nature. The sun shone brightly on this blessed spot, casting a warm glow over the verdant landscape. Indra, seated atop Airavaya, his majestic elephant, surveyed his kingdom from above. His eyes roamed over the thriving towns and villages where people lived in peace and prosperity. As he gazed upon Vaka's asylum, Indra descended to earth, his footsteps gentle on the soft grass. The Rishi, sensing the presence of the divine ruler, stood up with reverence. He welcomed Indra with humble offerings: water for washing his feet, a carpet for sitting, and the traditional argaya fruit and roots. Indra, pleased by Vaka's devotion, asked him about the sorrows of immortal life. "Tell me, O Silas Monite," he said, "what are the afflictions that those who live forever must endure?" Vaka's expression turned somber as he replied, "Life with disagreeable persons, separation from loved ones, and companionship with the wicked. These are but a few of the hardships we face. The death of sons and wives, kinsmen and friends, and dependence on others bring us great pain." As Vaka spoke, his words conjured images of men destitute of wealth, insulted by those who possessed it, families rising to dignity or falling from it, unions and disunions, all the contradictions that arose in a life without end, the calamities and reverses suffered by gods, Asuras, Gant, harvestmen, snakes, and Rakshasas are countless. Vaka said, "The learned and wise often suffer, while the foolish and ignorant rejoice." Indra's curiosity was piqued. He asked Vaka to reveal the joys of immortal life. The Rishi smiled again, his eyes sparkling with understanding. "Indra, if one cooks simple vegetables in their own house at dawn or dusk, there can be no greater happiness," he said, "to eat earned by one's own efforts without depending on others. This is the mark of a noble soul, and when a Brahmana eats after serving guests and offering food to his..." In the presence of the Pandava's sons, Rishi Markandeya began to speak about the greatness of the royal Kshatriyas. The wise sage's words were like a gentle breeze on a summer day, carrying with them the whispers of ancient wisdom. Markandeya's tale was set in a bygone era, when kings roamed the earth with honor and dignity. He spoke of King Sotra, a mighty ruler from the Kuru dynasty, who had paid his respects to the great rishis. As he journeyed back to his kingdom, he chanced upon another King Sivai, son of Usner. Seated majestically on his chariot, the two kings, each proud and confident in their own virtue, stood facing each other, unwilling to yield, their eyes locked in a silent challenge. As if the very fate of the world depended on who would give way first, the air was thick with tension, like the stillness before a storm breaks loose. Just then Narada, the celestial Rishi, appeared on the scene, his presence like a ray of sunshine piercing through the clouds. He beheld the standoff between the two kings and asked them to explain their stubborn refusal to yield. The kings, each convinced that they were equal in every respect, protested against Narada's intervention. Narada, with a gentle smile, began to recite three sacred slokas, his words dripping with wisdom, like honey from a hive. He who is wicked behaves wickedly, even towards the humble, he declared, but one who is honest treats honesty with honesty, even towards the dishonest. The kings listened intently, their faces aglow with understanding. The Rishi's words were like a key turning in a lock, unlocking the secrets of the universe. They revealed that true greatness lies not in physical strength or material wealth, but in character and virtues. Narada continued to speak, his voice weaving a tapestry of ancient wisdom. One should conquer the mean by charity, the untruthful by truth, the man of wicked deeds by forgiveness, and the dishonest by honesty. As Narada finished speaking, the two kings looked at each other with newfound understanding. They saw that they were not equals in every respect, but rather Siva's goodness was greater than Sutra's. With humility and gratitude, King Sutra walked around Siva's chariot, praising his numerous achievements and virtues. He then gave way to the king, allowing him to proceed on his journey. As the two kings parted ways, Narada smiled in satisfaction, knowing that his words had brought about a deeper understanding between them. And so Markandeya continued to speak of the greatness of the royal Kshatriyas, telling the Pandavas, sons of the blessedness, had dwelled within those who possessed honor, integrity, and compassion. In the kingdom of Yayati, son of Nahusha, the air was alive with the hum of activity. The sun beat down upon the bustling streets as citizens hurried about their daily business. King Yayati sat upon his throne, a majestic figure, surrounded by the very people he had sworn to protect and service. He basked in the adoration of his subjects. A Brahmin approached him with an air of quiet determination. The king's gaze met that of the holy man, and he sensed the weight of the Brahmana's words. O king, the priest began, his voice low and measured. I come to you on behalf of my revered preceptor. I beg of thee wealth for his sustenance. The king's expression turned thoughtful, his eyes narrowing as he considered the request. He beckoned the Brahmana closer, his hand gesturing for him to speak freely. The holy man took a deep breath before continuing. In this world, when men are asked for alms, they often harbor contempt for those who ask. I wish to know, O king, how thou wouldst respond in such a situation. What feelings would guide the actions? The king's response was immediate and sincere. I never boast of giving away a thing, he said, his voice full of conviction, nor do I heed solicitations for things that cannot be given. But when it comes to prayers for things that can be given, I listen with an open heart, and when I give, I am filled with joy. He paused, serving the Brahmana with a warm smile. Tell me, Holy One, what is it that thou seekest? The Brahmana's eyes sparkled with gratitude as he replied, I ask for 1,000 kine, O king, a gift that will sustain my preceptor and bring him peace. The king nodded graciously, his hand rising to signal the royal treasurer. Take me to the stables, he said, and prepare 1,000 of our finest cattle for this holy Manas. The Brahmana departed with the precious gift. King Yayati's thoughts turned inward. He pondered the nature of generosity and the joy it brought him in that moment. He knew that his actions were guided by a deeper principle, one that connected him to the world around him and to those who needed his help. The Brahmana returned to his preceptor, bearing with him the news of the king's generosity. Together they rejoiced in the gift of the 1,000 kine, their hearts filled with gratitude for the kindness of King Yayati. And as the holy man looked upon the king, he knew that their encounter had been a reminder of the transformative power of giving and receiving, a bond that transcended mere wealth or material possessions. The sun had just begun to set on the kingdom of Vrishadarva, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets. The air was alive with the sounds of merchants hawking their wares and the clanging of swords from the training grounds. In the midst of this vibrant scene, the Prince Vaisambhana's son approached the revered Rishi Markandeya with great curiosity. He asked Markandeya to recount the tales of royal Kshatriyas who had walked among them. Markandeya smiled, his eyes twinkling with the weight of centuries-old stories. My young friend, he began, there were two kings named Vrishadarva and Siddhuka, both renowned for their mastery over morals, and warfare. As Markandeya spoke, a sense of awe settled upon the prince's face. He leaned in, eager to hear more about these legendary rulers. Markandeya continued. Siddhuka was well aware that Vrishadarva had made a vow from his youth, one that he would only gift gold and silver to Brahmanas. One day a learned Brahmana, having completed his studies of the Vedas, arrived at Siddhuka's court. The Brahmana, with a deep bow, begged Siddhuka for wealth in the form of 1,000 steeds. But Siddhuka, though sympathetic, could not fulfill this request himself. He directed the Brahmana to seek out Vrishadarva, explaining that his king was a paragon of virtue and would surely grant the desired gift. The Brahmana, with a mixture of hope and trepidation, made his way to Vrishadarva's court. Upon arriving at the royal palace, the Brahmana requested an audience with the king. Vrishadarva, known for his unwavering commitment to his vow, initially refused the request, striking the Brahmana with a whip in the process. The Brahmana, taken aback by this sudden aggression, protested, "Why do you attack me thus? I am innocent." The air was heavy with tension as Vrishadarva's words hung in the balance. A king, sensing the gravity of his actions, paused and spoke softly. "O Brahmana, dost thou curse him that doth not give thee what thou askest, or is this behavior proper for a Brahmana?" The Brahmana, taken aback by the king's introspection, replied, "I was sent to you by Siddhuka, O king of kings. I come bearing his request." Vrishadarva's expression turned compassionate, and he offered a solution. "I will give thee whatever tribute comes to me before morning breaks. How can I send away an empty-handed man who has been whipped by me?" The prince listened to Markandeya's tale. His eyes grew wide with wonder. He had never heard of such a king, one who prayed.
In a distant land, King Sivai, son of Usanara, sat on his throne surrounded by his people. The air was filled with an unusual sight. A pigeon had fallen onto the king's lap, seeking refuge from a fierce hawk that pursued it. The priest who stood beside the king whispered words of caution. "Your Majesty, this is an ominous sign. A pigeon falling onto one's body foretells great danger. Give away wealth to save yourself from this impending doom." The pigeon itself spoke up, its voice trembling with fear. "I am a Manaya sage who has taken the form of a pigeon. I have come to you for protection, seeking refuge from the hawk that hunts me. I possess Vedic knowledge, live a life of self-control and asceticism, and have never spoken ill of my teacher. I repeat, the Vedas know their prosody and have studied them letter by letter." The hawk, now perched on a nearby branch, addressed the king with a stern tone. "Creatures are born in different orders. Perhaps in a past life you were begotten by this pigeon. It is not right for you to interfere with my food protecting this bird." King Sivai pondered the words of both the pigeon and the hawk. He knew that giving up an afflicted creature, seeking protection, was a grave mistake. He who does so shall not receive protection when he needs it himself. The king said, "The clouds will withhold rain, seeds will wither, and his offspring will perish in childhood." Moved by compassion, King Sivai decided to offer a bowl cooked with rice as a substitute for the pigeon. He instructed his men to carry it to the hawk's dwelling place, filled with abundant meat. The hawk refused, stating that the pigeon was ordained to be its food. The king, determined to save the pigeon, proposed an alternative. "I will cut off a piece of flesh from my right thigh and weigh it against the pigeon. If it is equal in weight, I shall spare the pigeon's life." The king carefully cut off pieces of his flesh, but each time the pigeon still weighed heavier as the king continued to sacrifice parts of his body. He felt no pain or grief. The hawk, witnessing this selfless act, finally disappeared, saying, "The pigeon is saved." King Sivai then asked the pigeon to reveal its true identity and the nature of the hawk. The pigeon replied, "I am Ignite, the fire god, also known as Vaiswanara. The hawk is none other than Indra. Armed with the thunderbolt, you, O king, have proven yourself a true hero. Your selfless act has earned you great fame and respect from both gods and sages." The pigeon then prophesied that King Sivai would soon be blessed with a son named Kapadaroman, who would become renowned for his bravery and good fortune.
In a distant land, King Ashtik, a descendant of the wise sage Viswamitra, had performed a grand horse sacrifice attended by many kings. Among them were his 3 brothers, Kratardna, Vashamanas, and Sivai, sons of Usanur. After the sacrifice was complete, They set out on their royal chariot accompanied by Narada, a celestial sages. They journeyed. Narada joined them on their chariot, and one of the kings asked him to share his wisdom. The king inquired about their fate, for they were all blessed with long lives and virtues, and wondered who among them would fall from heaven first. Narada replied that Ashtaka would be the first to descend to reason. He explained was that Ashtaka had once taken Narada on a tour of his kingdom, showing him thousands of cattle, each with distinct colors. When asked about their own worship, Ashtaka proudly claimed they were gifts from him. This boastful answer would lead to his downfall in the afterlife. The other kings then asked who among them would be next to fall. Narada revealed that Pratarna would be the second to descend. The reason he explained was that Pratarna had once promised Brahmana a horse, but kept putting him off until finally he gave away his own chariot's horses one by one each time, saying that I'll give it to you later. This selfish act would also lead to his downfall. The remaining two kings then asked about their fate. Narada revealed that Vasumanus would be the next to fall. The reason he explained was that Vasumanus had been offered a beautiful flowery chariot by a Brahmana, but each time Narada admired it, the king refused to give it to him, saying, "You have already praised it, and now this lack of generosity would also lead to his downfall." Finally, one of the kings asked about Sivai's fate. Narada replied that Sivai would be spared and ascend to heaven, but Narada himself would fall from heaven. The reason he explained was that Sivai had once been tested by a Brahmana who disguised himself as Vidatrai, the creator god. The Brahmana asked Sivai to kill his own son for food, but Sivai did not hesitate and even offered to cook and eat the boy's flesh himself. However, when the Brahmana revealed his true identity and praised Sivai's self-control, he was forced to admit that he had been testing him all along. Sivai, proud of his actions, explained to his counselors that he had done nothing for fame or wealth, but rather out of a desire to follow the virtuous path. He believed that his actions were not sinful and that he had acted with integrity. Narada, moved by Sivai's words, revealed the truth about there. In the serene forest glade, the sons of Pandu gathered around the wise sage Markandeya. They asked with curiosity, "Markandeya, is there anyone who has lived longer than you?" Markandeya pondered for a moment before responding, "Indeed, there is a royal sage named Indradyumna who had fallen from heaven and wept, 'My achievements are lost. He came to me seeking recognition.'" Markandeya explained that he couldn't possibly know the king's pursuits, as they were wanderers, living only for a night in each village or town. Their ascetic life has still made them weak and unable to engage in worldly activities. Indradyumna then asked Markandeya if there was anyone who had lived longer than him. Markandeya replied that an old named Pravarakarna dwelled on the majestic Himalayas, farther away from their current location. Intrigued by this information, Indradyumna transformed into a horse and carried Markandeya to meet Pravarakarna. The king asked the old, "Do you know me?" But the old paused, reflecting for a moment before responding, "I do not know thee." Undeterred, Indradyumna inquired if there was anyone older than Pravarakarna. The old replied that a crane named Nadajinga dwelled by a nearby lake and might be able to recognize the king. Markandeya, the old, and the king traveled to the lake, where they asked Nadajinga, "Do you know King Indradyumna?" The crane reflected for a moment before saying, "I do not know this king." However, when asked if there was anyone older than him, Nadajinga replied that a tortoise named Akapura dwelled in the same lake and might be familiar with the king. The group journeyed to the lake's edge, where they met Akapura. As he emerged from the water, his eyes filled with tears, and his heart was deeply moved. He trembled all over, nearly overcome by emotion. With joined hands, he exclaimed, "Alas, do I not know this one?" He had planted 1,000 sacrificial stakes during the fire ceremony, and the lake itself was excavated by the feet of cows given away by this king to the Brahmanas after completing the sacrifice. "I have lived here since." Then, just as Akapura finished speaking, a celestial chariot descended from the heavens, accompanied by an aerial voice that addressed Indradyumna. "Come and claim your rightful place in heaven. Your achievements are great, and you deserve to return cheerfully." The voice also recited sacred verses stating that virtuous deeds spread across the earth and ascend to heaven as long as their report endures. So does the door's presence in heaven. Indradyumna, moved by these words. In the assembly of King Yudhishthira, a great and just ruler, the illustrious sage Markandeya began to recount the tale of the royal sage Indradyumna's journey to reclaim his place in heaven. The king, eager to learn from this ancient wisdom, asked Markandeya to reveal the secret to achieving admission into the realm of Indra through charity. Markandeya explained that there are four kinds of feudal lives: one without a son, one who has strayed from virtue, one who relies on others for sustenance, and one who cooks food without sharing it with the pitras and sisters, gods, or guests. He also described 16 types of feudal charity, including giving to those who have fallen away from virtuous vows, thieves, false preceptors, untruthful individuals, and those born in bastardy. The sage warned that gifts given out of fear or anger are like a fleeting dream, yielding no merit, until the donor is reborn. However, when given with a clear mind and a pure heart, charity can bring great rewards. Markandeya emphasized that the most meritorious act of charity is to give to Brahmanas who possess the sacred knowledge of the Vedas. Yudhishthira inquired about how Brahmanas who accept gifts from all four orders manage to save both themselves and others. Markandeya revealed that through their mastery of japa, chanting mantras, sacred formulas, homa, fire rituals, and Vedic knowledge, they construct a Vedic boat that rescues both the giver and receiver. The sage cautioned against giving charity to those who are afflicted with physical or moral impurities. Instead, one should offer gifts to Brahmanas who are pure in heart and body and who have not been cursed or fallen from their virtuous path. Markandeya also advised Yudhishthira to give food to the poor and the weary, for this act is considered the greatest of all charities. The king asked about the distance between the realm of men and that of Yama, as well as the means by which one can pass over it. Markandeya replied that the journey is long and arduous, but those who have given charity with a pure heart will be guided to their destination. He revealed that the giver of food walks first among the righteous, followed by the speaker of truth, and the benefactor of those in need. As Yudhishthira listened intently to Markandeya's words, he was filled with wonder and awe at the wisdom shared. His younger brothers too were deeply moved by the sage's teachings, and together they sought to understand the mysteries of charity and the path to achieving a place in heaven. In the midst of a tranquil forest, the wise sage Markandeya sat before King Yudhishthira, sharing tales from the ancient past. The king's curiosity was piqued as he inquired about the royal sage Indradyumna and his journey to heaven. However, it was another story that caught the king's attention: the tale of Dandumar, a king who once ruled over the Ikshvaka dynasty. Markandeya began his narrative by describing the renowned Rishi Utinka, who dwelled in a serene wilderness. The sage had been practicing severe asceticism for countless years, seeking to please the divine Vishnu. As he meditated, Vishnu appeared before him, radiant with an otherworldly glow. Utinka, humbled and awestruck, began to sing hymns of praise extolling the Lord's boundless power in creation. O, the supreme male being, Utinka sang, thou art the cause of happiness for both gods and mortals. Thou art the destroyer of all terrors, and by the 3 steps thou hast covered the 3 worlds. It was the prowess that vanquished the Asuras in their prime, bringing peace and prosperity to the celestial realms. Vishnu, pleased with Utinka's devotion, granted him a boon. Ask for anything your heart desires. Utinka, however, declined, saying he had already been blessed by beholding the divine Vishnu. He requested instead that his heart remain steadfast in virtue, truth, and self-contentment, and that it forever turn to the Lord in devotion. Vishnu smiled, pleased with Utinka's humility, and said, your request is granted. You shall possess Adyuga, power that will allow you to achieve greatness for the dwellers of heaven and the triple world. The sage then revealed that an Asura named Dandu was undergoing fire asceticism, intent on destroying the triple world. Markandeya continued his tale by explaining the lineage of kings from Ikshvaka's dynasty. After Ikshvaka's passing, Sasiddha ascended the throne and ruled with great virtue. From Sasiddha descended Kakachta Aninas, Prithviswageswa Adrai, Uvaneswa Sravastha, who built the city of Sravasthai. Brihadaswa, and finally Kulaswa. Kuvalaswa was a king of great intelligence and virtue with 21,000 sons who were fierce warriors and skilled in learning. When his father Vrihadaswa prepared to retire into the woods for asceticism, Utinka approached him. The Rishi persuaded Vrihadaswa not to leave the kingdom, citing his duty as a protector of his people. King Utinka said to protect the people is the duty it behoveth. In the sacred land of Varata, a revered sage named Utinka visited the wise King Vrihadaswa. The king's son Kuvalaswa was renowned for his unwavering courage and unmatched prowess in battle. Utinka sought the king's permission to entrust his mission to the young prince. With a nod of approval, the king handed over his authority to Kuvalaswa, saying, let it be done by you. Then with a gentle bow King Vryhadiswa retreated into a dense forest, leaving Uthinka and Kuvalaswa to their noble endeavor. When the wise Yudhishthira asked Markandeya about the mighty deity who had once threatened the universe, the sage began his tale in the beginning. He said, when the world was reduced to a vast expanse of water and all living beings were destroyed, Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, lay in Yugit, slumber on the hood of Sesha, the serpent of immense energy. As the universe's creator Brahma emerged from a lotus born from Vishnu's navel, so too did Vishnu himself rise from his meditative reclusia. Radiant lotus had sprouted from Vishnu's navel, and from its petals emerged Brahma, a lord of worlds. The four-faced deity was invincible due to his own boundless energy and possessed immense strength and prowess. Meanwhile, two powerful Danavas, Madhu and Ketava, beheld Vishnu in his slumber, surrounded by Brahma on a lotus seat in trade. They began to harass, but grandsire, causing him to tremble when Brahma's fear reached its peak, Vishnu awakened from his sleep. Upon opening his eyes, he saw the two mighty Danavas and welcomed them with open arms. I am pleased with you, he said, as a token of my gratitude. I shall grant you boons. The two proud beings loudly replied, ask us anything, O supreme deity. We are willing to grant your heart's desire, Vishnu. Then asked for their help in slaying them, not as a cruel act, but to maintain balance in the universe. Madhu and Ketava agreed, stating that they had never spoken an untruth and were eager to fulfill the Lord's wish. However, they requested one condition. They wanted to be slain at a spot completely free from any covering or obstruction. Vishnu pondered their request, but soon realized that finding such a spot was impossible on earth or in the sky. His eyes scanned his own body, and finally he spotted an uncovered area between his thighs. With his divine discus, he severed the heads of Madhu and Ketava, fulfilling his promise to the two Danavas who had become devoted sons to the Lord. Thus, in the ancient days, a mighty Azure named Tundu was born to Madhu and Ketava. He was a powerful being known for his incredible energy and prowess. Seeking to gain invincibility, Tundu undertook severe ascetic penances, standing on one leg and reducing his body to mere veins and arteries. Brahma, the creator god, was pleased with his devotion and granted him a boon. No god, demon, or celestial being could slay him. Tundu's wrath knew no bounds. As he remembered the death of his father at the hands of Vishnu, he began to terrorize the gods and grant harvests, and even frightened the asylum of Utink, a wise Rishi. Meanwhile, King Kuvalaswa, accompanied by his Tolos and powerful sons, set out to defeat Tundu as they marched towards the Sea of Sands known as Ujjaleka. The gods showered them with celestial flowers, and the sound of celestial kettle drums echoed through the air as they approached the site where Tundu lay hidden beneath the sands. The king's sons began excavating the area. After 7 days, they finally uncovered the massive body of the Azure, who was lying coiled like a serpent covering the western region of the desert. The gods and Gan harvest gathered to witness the epic battle between Tundu and Kuvalaswa. Danava rose from his slumber, enraged by the attacks on him with sharp-pointed shafts, masses, and heavy clubs. He began to swallow the weapons and vomited fiery flames that consumed all of King Kuvalaswa's sons in an instant. The Azure's wrath was so fierce that he seemed like a second Kumbhakarna, devouring everything in his path. However, just as Tundu thought he had triumphed, a mighty stream of water flowed from the body of King Kuvalaswa, extinguishing the flames and allowing him to regain control. The king, filled with the energy, then consumed Tundu using the Brahmastra, a powerful weapon meant for relieving the triple world of its fears. With Tundu defeated, King Kuvalaswa became invincible in battle and was henceforth known as Dunhumor. The gods and rishis who had witnessed the encounter were overjoyed and granted him boons. He would always be able to give wealth to superior brahmanas. He would be invincible against all foes, and he would have friendship with Vishnu as a reward for his bravery. King Kuvalaswa was blessed with long life, great good fortune, and the ability to dwell in heaven forever. His 3 remaining sons, Dridaswa, Kapilaswa, and Chandraswa, went on to found the illustrious line of kings belonging to Ashika's race. In the presence of King Yudhishthira, a wise and venerable sage named Markandeya was summoned to impart his knowledge on the sacred virtues of women. The king, known for his unwavering dedication to righteousness, sought guidance from the revered sage on the intricacies of morality. As Markandeya began to speak, The air was filled with an air of reverence. King Yudhisthira, with a deep sense of respect and humility, listened intently as the sage shared his wisdom. The king's question had been one that puzzled him for a long time. How do chaste women who devote themselves entirely to their husbands achieve such great virtue? Markandeya's eyes sparkled with insight as he began to explain. O king Yudhisthira, he said, the mother who brings forth and rears her offspring with selfless devotion is indeed a paragon of virtue. She sacrifices her own desires and comforts for the sake of her children, and in doing so she embodies the very essence of compassion and love. A sage paused, allowing his words to sink deep into the king's heart. Fathers also strive to be virtuous. He continued, through their ascetic practices, worship of the gods, and other pious endeavors. They seek to ensure that their children grow up to be strong and capable individuals worthy of their heritage. Markandeya's voice took on a tone of deep reverence as he spoke of the mother's role in shaping her child's character. The mother's influence is like the gentle rain that nourishes the soil. He said, it is through her love and guidance that children develop their values and principles, and it is she who instills in them the courage to face life's challenges. As the sage spoke, King Yudhisthira listened with rapt attention, his eyes filled with a deep understanding of the sacred bond between parents and children. Markandeya's words were like a gentle breeze that stirred within him a sense of awe and reverence for the selfless devotion of women. The sage's gaze turned to the king, and he spoke in a tone of solemnity. O king Yudhisthira, remember this: chaste women achieve their virtue by serving their husbands with unwavering dedication and loyalty. It is through their selfless service that they win heaven, for it is said that by serving their husbands alone, they can attain the highest spiritual realms. Markandeya finished speaking. A hush fell over the gathering, as if the very presence of the sage had infused the air with an aura of sacredness. King Yudhisthira listened in silence, his heart filled with a newfound appreciation for the virtues of chaste women. The sage's words awakened within him a deeper understanding of the intricate web of relationships that bind humanity together, and he knew that he would carry this wisdom with him. For in a dense forest there lived a wise and virtuous ascetic named Kausika. He was renowned for his mastery over the Vedas and Angus, and his ability to recite them with ease. One day, while Kausika was seated at the foot of a tree reciting the Vedas, a female crane perched on top of the tree began to defecate on him. Enraged by this affront, Kausika's anger flared up, and he thought of harming the crane. However, as he beheld the crane fallen from the tree insensible and lifeless, Kausika was overcome with pity. He lamented, alas, I have done a bad deed. Urged by anger and malice, he repeated these words many times, filled with regret for his actions. Kausika then entered a nearby village to seek alms, but the chaste housewife, who knew him from before, was busy attending to her husband's needs. She had requested Kausika to wait, but in her haste she forgot about him. When Kausika spoke to her, she felt abashed and immediately took some offerings for him. However, as Kausika accepted the alms, he became enraged once more. You do not regard Brahmanas as superior, he said. You lead a domestic life, but disregard us. Indra himself bows down to us. What shall I say of men on earth? The housewife, with great humility and respect, replied, I am no she-crane, O regenerate Rish. I cast off this anger of thine, imaged as thou art. What canst thou do to me with these angry glances of thine? Kausika's anger was momentarily pacified by the housewife's words, but he still felt the sting of his earlier encounter with the crane. The housewife, sensing Kausika's turmoil, began to conciliate him once more. She spoke of her devotion to her husband and her regard for Brahmanas as being akin to that of the gods. She then spoke of the great merits of Brahmanas, who were like fire and could consume the entire earth with their wrath. However, she also reminded Kausika that these same Brahmanas were equally capable of forgiveness and compassion. She told him that her heart inclined towards serving her husband, whom she regarded as the highest among all gods. As Kausika listened to the housewife's words, his anger began to subside. He realized that his earlier outburst had been unwarranted, and that he should have exercised more self-control. The housewife continued to speak of the virtues of Brahmanas, who were known for their truthfulness, honesty, and devotion to study. She told Kausika that the gods themselves recognized a true Brahmana as one who was virtuous, pure, and devoted to the study. In the midst of his reverent contemplation, Kausika, a Brahmana, couldn't shake off the profound impact of the woman's words. She had spoken of morality and virtue with such depth and wisdom that he felt compelled to accept her counsel at face value. Her knowledge of the she-crane's demise and the virtuous import of her words only strengthened his faith in her with a sense of curiosity and reverence. Kozak set out for Mythala, determined to seek guidance from one who was well versed in the mysteries of virtue and morality. As he traversed through many forests, villages, and towns, he finally arrived at Mythal, a city ruled by King Janek. The city's grandeur left him awestruck. Its streets were adorned with flags of various creeds, resounding with the noise of sacrifices and festivities, and furnished with splendid gateways. As Kozak wandered through the city, he inquired about the virtuous Faller, only to be directed by some twice-born persons. He made his way to the indicated location, where he found the Faller seated in a butcher's yard, selling venison and buffalo meat. However, upon noticing Kozak's presence, the Faller rose from his seat and approached him with a sense of reverence. The Faller greeted Kozak, warmly acknowledging that he was aware of the woman's words and the purpose of Kozak's visit. Moved by the Faller's words, Kozak began to reflect on the wonders he had just witnessed, the second marvel in his life. The Faller then he invited Kozak to his abode, suggesting they proceed there together. Upon entering the Faller's home, Kozak was offered a seat and water for washing his feet and face. As he sat comfortably, he expressed his concern that the Faller's profession did not befit him. However, the Faller explained that it was an inherited tradition, passed down through generations of his family. The Faller further elaborated on his duties as a Sivra, emphasizing that he adhered to his order's responsibilities by serving his superiors and elders truthfully. He also clarified that he sold meat obtained from animals already slain by others, never consuming it himself. In fact, the Faller asserted that he lived a life of virtue, adhering to the principles ordained for him. As Kozak listened intently, the Faller shared his insights on the importance of duty and adherence to one's order. He explained how kings like Janika played a crucial role in maintaining balance within their kingdoms by upholding justice and punishing those who strayed from their duties. The Faller also cautioned that sinfulness among kings could lead to widespread decay, giving rise to ill-fated beings. In his address to Kozak, the Faller emphasized the significance of living a life guided by virtue, truthfulness, and self-control. In a forest glade, Markandeya sat before Yudhishthira, recounting a tale of a pious Faller who sought to justify his profession as a hunter and butcher. The Faller, with a deep sense of reverence, spoke to a Brahmana about the nature of karma and its consequences. My deeds may seem cruel, he began, but I am merely an instrument of destiny carrying out the will of the universe. The deity takes life, while I act as a secondary agent, releasing souls from their earthly bonds. He paused, his eyes gleaming with conviction. Even those animals I slay acquire karma, for their meat nourishes God's guests and servants. Propitiating the menace, the Faller's words were laced with a deep understanding of the intricate web of life. He spoke of King Sivai, who had attained heaven by sacrificing his own flesh, and of King Rantideva, whose kitchen slaughtered 2,000 animals daily. Yet he distributed food with me every day, earning an unrivaled reputation. The Faller's reasoning was rooted in ancient wisdom. Whoever partakes of animal food after offering it daily to the gods and manes is not polluted by the act. He cited the rule laid down by Manas that such a person remains untainted like a Brahmacharan who has intercoursed with his wife during her menstrual period. Markandeya's tale continued as the Faller turned to Yudhishthira and asked for his opinion on various matters. He spoke of King Saudisa, who had preyed upon men under a curse, and of the consequences of one's karma. A person having their being under the influence of evil karma must always consider how they can atone for their karma. He said the Faller's words were laced with a sense of humility and responsibility. He acknowledged that even agriculture, considered a praiseworthy occupation, involves harm to animal life. He pointed out that men hunt wild animals, cut down trees, and destroy living organisms in various ways, often unconsciously. As the sun began to set, Markandeya's tale reached its conclusion. The Faller's words had painted a vivid picture of the complex interplay between karma, destiny, and human actions. Yudhishthira listened intently, his mind grappling with the weighty implications of the Faller's words. And at the end, the Faller's message was clear, that there is no one on earth who is free from the sin of doing injury to creatures. Even the wise and enlightened destroy animal life in various ways, often without realizing it. The reversal of natural order, where good men are not commended and bad men are not ashamed, was a phenomenon seen everywhere in this world as Markandeya finished his tale. Yudhishthira's eyes seemed to hold a new-found understanding. The sun had just begun to set on the vast expanse of the forest, casting a warm orange glow over the trees as Markandeya continued his tale to Yudhishthira. The virtuous Faller's words dripped